Mental health or homework? Pick one. Now I know what you're saying, Daniel. It's possible to be a student, to do your homework, and to have good mental health. Liar. Look, here's what this episode's about. In life, whether you're a young person looking at homework, or whether you've graduated and now you're doing work, or maybe you're working part-time while you're a student, here's something that I want you to remember. In life, people will have expectations for you. These might be your parents, these might be your romantic, intimate partners, your friends. Let's talk about expectations at the institution, so educational institutions, and your workplace. Generally speaking, we kind of have this trend in society, for lack of a better word, that says, this is what I expect from you, and this is how you exceed my expectations. And we have this society which encourages individuals to exceed expectations. Now, the problem arises, and I've talked about this in my earlier videos, where what happens when you encourage people to exceed expectations, but the reward that you get is not a true reflection of your performance. So if instead of working 8 hours, I put in 10 hours, but I don't get paid for the extra 2, what's going on here? Manipulation, being overworked, maybe a crummy boss. Now, let's go in a best case scenario where you put in the extra amount of effort, you exceed the person's expectations, and you do get the positive result. Let's say you're a student and your prof tells you, look, this is what you have to do on the assignment to get a B. But if you exceed my expectations, that's an A. And you think to yourself, well, I'm a dedicated student. I want to do the best. I want to make myself proud. I want to impress my prof. Let me put in the extra time necessary in order to exceed these expectations. But that comes at a cost, doesn't it? We only have so much effort and energy in a day. So we have to be careful about the things that take away from our energy. Like what, Daniel? What takes away from our energy? Very simply, the food that we eat. Certain foods that you eat are going to make you tired a whole lot quicker than other foods. There's some literature out there to suggest high carb foods can lead you to being more tired than low carb foods. So for example, if you eat a lot of rice or a lot of pasta, a lot of white bread, especially things that are also fatty as well, like really fat, like if you have a hamburger, if you have a pizza, it tends to kind of mellow people out rather than energize them. Compare that to when you have a smoothie, right? Or even imagine being in a relationship or having a friend who always brings you down. Whether they love to argue, they love to criticize, they're not a fun person to be around, they drain your energy. So we've established that we only have so much limited energy, and we want to be careful of what we allocate our energy to. So you're sitting back and you go, well, Daniel, I understand that in life, it's important to have this crazy thing that they call work-life balance. So it means there's a certain amount of time that I have put aside for work. Then there's a certain amount of time I've put aside for leisure activities. This might include seeing my friends. This might include watching YouTube videos for a couple of hours, whatever it may be. And if you're a student, maybe you fit in all three. Maybe you go to school, attend your classes, come home, do your homework, then go to work, then try to put in leisure activities. Now you can understand, and everybody listening to this knows, that balancing things doesn't always go well. What happens when you're trying to balance different things, but you're encouraged to put more eggs into the educational basket or into the workplace basket than the other things? And you're thinking, look, I'm probably going to get a B on this assignment, but if I work a little bit harder tonight, if I miss out on that party, I can have an A. I can have an A. Instead of this weird symbol, I can have this symbol. And there'll be this number. And look, the number is meaningless, but what it represents, that's the meaning. And then I can compare it to the average of the class. And if I'm above average, my God, that's awesome. And that's the right thing to do. Here's a worry. There's this almost archetype of, and especially with men, they do this a lot. I want you to imagine this, and you've definitely seen it in movie and TV shows, and maybe in your real life. The man who is in his 40s or 50s, health-wise, he's not doing too well, doesn't work out, has a poor diet, doesn't sleep well, is overly stressed and is overworked, and is allowing work to cut into his family time, right? It's the dad who misses his kid's violin recital because he wants to make it to an extra conference to impress his boss, right? It's the guy who tells his wife he's going to be home at 5 p.m., but then his boss tells him, look, if you stay a little bit later, I owe you one, right? So he stays home later at work. He stays at work later, calls his wife to say, I'm not going to be home, have dinner without me. And this becomes a repetition on every Friday night. So why? Why do we do this? Well, because his supervisor told him that he's this close to getting a promotion, but Kyle, in HR has also been doing really well. And, if you did this favor, it would really boost you. And then maybe you could get the promotion. You could make slightly more money and you could advance in this feeling of fulfillment and achievement, and you're doing what's right. Right? Being a student is no different. If you're applying for scholarships, if you want to go to graduate school, if there's other things that you're interested in where GPA is important, if nobody's trying, look, there's a guy who Chael Sonnen says this in relation to MMA, but it works with any part of life. He goes at any time, forget fighting the best. Okay, if you're a professional, you don't want to fight the best. You want to fight the easiest guy for the most amount of money in front of as many eyes as possible. Forget this idea of if I can do it with minimal effort, that's what I want to do. And I know it doesn't sound honorable and it doesn't sound excitable and encouraging, but that's generally what life is. If you can get an A with barely trying, then why try at all, right? And what we happen is, when you've got a bunch of people in a room and they're trying a lot and it's a competitive workplace or it's a competitive school environment, now you've got to try really, really hard. Why? Because there's competition. If not trying used to get you an A, now because everyone's trying, guess what? You have to try too. Now you have to put on more effort. So the tough thing becomes balancing your life when the expectations seem to rise based on the people around you. I'm planning on possibly doing a video in the future about how having a bachelor's degree, I can say in North America, has been devalued, or it's lost its value in a sense in the last 30 or 40 years. And it's primarily because of this kind of idea, right? When you're an employer and you say, look, who can come and work for me? 10 people apply. Out of those 10, 2 of them have bachelor's degrees. So now they rise above the other 8. Granted that those bachelor degrees are relevant to the job, right? Now imagine he says, all right, I'm going to put this job application status is open, all apply. 10 people apply, guess what? They all have bachelor's degrees. Well, what happens now? Well, now you have to discriminate. Right now, it's not good enough anymore. What used to be competitive 40 years ago, if most people have it, now we got to discriminate further and further and further. Because we want to weed out the bad ones, right? Because we want to find the best. So the problem with this sort of a trend, this encouragement to exceed expectations in our lives, is there's no one looking out for your mental health. Especially not the institutions, not the universities, not your workplace. I made a video about burnout a long time ago. Long story short, this is what you need to know. If your supervisor says, look, I feel like you're being overworked, you're working 10 hours a day, that's a lot. I want you to attend a health and wellness seminar here. It's 3 hours on a Saturday. And you're sitting there going, wait a minute, I just told you I'm burnt out. We both agree I'm working too much. And the solution is, ready for it? You want me to attend a health and wellness seminar on my weekend? Do you see the problem with that, folks? Do you see how we place mental health into the hands of the individual? A lot of jobs now have a section dedicated to mental health. It might be a blurb, it might be a couple of sentences, and it'll say something like, mental health is extremely important, you have to take care of yourself, you have to remember to take breaks. And if you look at their solutions, it'll say things like, spend less time on the internet, try going out on a walk. They don't talk about anything that they're doing that may cause your poor mental health. Every semester at my university, we get these kind of outlines for what the classes are going to look like, for what the exams and gradings and midterms are going to look like, right? At the very, very end, there's a page that says, be well, take care of yourself. Remember to go for a walk. Remember to talk to friends. Remember to eat well and to sleep well, and remember to exercise. The first problem is this. What does it tell you when you get a 6-page pamphlet or a 6-page booklet, and mental health, that's supposed to be so important, is the very last page? It's not the first page, it's the last page. Hey, this is when the exam is. This is when the papers due. This is when the homework's due. Oh, by the way, make sure to sleep, eat well, and exercise. Let's get the important stuff out of the way first. This is when the exam's due. This is when I want to see this homework done by. Oh, okay. So that's what's important. And then the footnote is your health. And as I said earlier, in the health section, it never says, look, if you're overwhelmed, come tell me, we'll postpone an exam. You've got a lot on your plate from work and volunteering and stuff. No problem. You don't have to do this section. You don't have to, because your mental health comes first. No. No, it doesn't. This exam and this assignment and this reading comes first. We do not change the institution to tailor to the individual. The individual must adapt themselves to the individual, to the institution. And if the individual fails to adapt themselves, then they fail. If you fail in my class and I'm a teacher, it's not because my teaching is poor, it's because you're not good enough. You're not putting in enough effort. So we know that mental health is not a priority. We know that every institution, every business wants to make money. The biggest universities, at least I can say in North America, I don't know how many people knew this, they do not pay tax. Harvard does not pay tax. Stanford does not pay tax. So you have these businesses, the institutions that make a gross amount of money, whether you want to look at in relation to the amount of tuition they charge and all the other nonsensical fees, overpriced food, overpriced parking, the poor wages of the professors. So money is the number one most important thing. So as an employee, if you can make more money for the company, great. If you're in a place that isn't manipulative, that behavior should be rewarded. The important thing is this: just because it's rewarded, do you want to be doing it? If I can work an extra 4 hours on Saturday night and increase my grade from a B to an A, if that was possible, let's say hypothetically it was, do I want to do that? What am I losing when I do that? And you go, Daniel, look, what are you talking about? All right? Of course you want to do it. It's the right thing to do. School number one. Who cares if you miss a party? Okay, so that's one Saturday. How about the next one? Would you do the same thing? How about the next one? How about the next one? How about the next one? You'd pick the same option every single time, right? Okay, interesting. So what's that nonsense about make sure to take breaks, make sure to take time for yourself? How does that work? Let me give you another example of how these institutions don't care about your mental health. Your prof says, look, folks, enjoy the weekend, take time for yourselves. By the way, this assignment is due on the first day back. And you go, okay, you're sitting there, you're going, all right, so I've got a break. I've got about 2 or 3 days. I've got one assignment due from one class. This assignment's going to take about 2 to 3 hours. Okay, how many classes am I in? 5. I'm going, okay, 5, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I have to spend 10 hours on assignments? 2 hours for each. And ballpark, some assignments are going to be shorter, some assignments are going to be a little longer. But when every prof goes, hey, enjoy the weekend, by the way, here's my assignment, it's due on the day back. You go, well, I'm in 5 classes. And chances are, unless your parents are rich, and I'm working. So I use the weekend to get the assignments done, because 10 hours is possible. It's definitely doable. I get the assignments done, and then maybe you go to work, and God forbid, maybe you volunteer somewhere because you need to for whatever scholarship you're applying for. And you come back on Monday feeling no more rested than you were Monday through Thursday, and you have the audacity to ask, so how was the break? How was the break? Did you take some time out for yourself to go out on a walk? And then you think, no, I didn't. I got all these assignments done. And have you ever had that like a conversation with a prof? How does that normally go to? I'll tell you what it turns into. Usually it goes like yeah, it happens sometimes. You just got to remember to take time for yourself. What? So you think I forgot to take time for myself. Okay. When you're at a job and you leave to go on vacation and your employer keeps emailing you on vacation and you have to keep pulling out your laptop when you're with your family at the hotel and you're answering emails. And then you go back to work and they say, how was the vacation? And you're thinking, oh, the time that I didn't spend on my laptop replying back to you, it was fine. So that brings us to the question, well, what is a vacation, right? What is time off? And this whole debacle of how much time is it appropriate for me to allocate to this job? Ladies, I'm speaking to you. For a long time, there's this idea that women are not as smart as men. Women are not as disciplined as men. Women do not have it in them to work up the corporate ladder to start making as much money as men can. All right? The question becomes this. When we find out that all that is bogus, and it's not based on literature, it's not based on science or data. If I was sitting with you in a cafe and we're two friends talking, and I said, look, I believe you can work 60 hours a week if you wanted to. You can become the CEO of this company if you want to. Let's say you could. And I believe in you because I'm your friend and I want to encourage you. Here's a more important question. Do you want to? I want to be the best student in this class, especially because I'm a girl in engineering and most of engineering is men and people think I'm not as smart as men to do well, and so I want to stick. Let's say you could. Does that mean you should? Just because you're one of the only women in engineering class or in computer science class, does that mean you have this obligation to outperform everyone? If you want to, genuinely burning desire, now we can have a different conversation. But if this is this idea of, I don't know that I can and I have to prove that I can, be careful. Sometimes in life we can get so aroused and so excited and so filled up with heat and excitement, and we get this tunnel vision. We forget if it's a question of, can I? Let me prove it. Versus, do I want to? Should I? I want to prove that in my relationship, I'm not the problem. So I have to go get into another relationship right now. Because otherwise, what will Tiffany say? What will Stephanie say? What will James say? They'll say, oh, I'm going to die alone. Well, I got to get into another. Do you want to? Do you want to put in that extra time to go from a B to an A? Do you want to take that time to apply for a scholarship? This isn't a video saying you shouldn't put in effort. This isn't a video saying you shouldn't exceed expectations. But my hope is that discussion has kind of broadened our perspective to understand the scarcity of time, to understand the lack of care for mental health, whether it's from educational institutions or workplace institutions, and to sit there with our feelings and assess, do I want to do this? And this might be an idea of, look, I don't want to do this, but my parents really want me to do this, so I'm doing it for them. That's another conversation. That's another video in and of itself, right? Look, I don't really want to, but I don't want to let this person down, so I'm doing it for them. Or I don't enjoy my job. I don't enjoy working these crazy hours, but we got to pay rent. I have family that depends on me, so I have to. It's not about, choosing not to or not doing what you love. I hope you enjoyed today's video, folks. It was just to make you think a little, expand the horizon, think about different perspectives. As always, please take care of yourselves. And if you're ever in a position where you're overworked, take a second to think. These institutions are set up in a way where they benefit them first and you second. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, I hope the conclusion isn't, I'm just not good enough. I need to try harder. Maybe, just maybe, the conclusion should be, how can our institutions meet us halfway so that we can perform better as students and as employees, so that everybody succeeds? Take care.